All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into some declassified documents. And, these are always interesting, right? Specifically, we're looking at the JFK assassination and, well, really the role of Army intelligence in all of this.
Yeah, and this isn't just like what these documents tell us directly, but the questions they raise, makes you think twice about those official investigations.
Absolutely. We're looking at a research article from the Third Decade Journal called The Final Investigation, the HSCA and Army Intelligence.
And it's all based on these documents declassified way back in 77.
So, like, right off the bat, this article throws a major curveball. We're talking just an hour and a half after Oswald's arrest. Army intelligence in San Antonio, they contact the FBI. And what do they tell them? They've got info about a selective service card.
With the name Alex Heidel on it, found on Oswald.
Right. And not only that, they even mention an earlier incident in New Orleans where someone, guess who, using that same name, A.J. Heidel, was out there distributing pro-Castro stuff. It's like, why is the Army so interested in this alias? What's the big deal?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, what did Army intelligence know about Oswald, about Heidel, before Dallas? The article suggests that by feeding this info to the FBI, they might have been nudging the investigation, maybe even pushing it towards a conspiracy angle.
Which is crazy because the Warren Commission basically said, nah, Heidel was just something Oswald made up.
Exactly. Makes you wonder.
It's almost like they were pointing the FBI in a specific direction, like, hey, look over here, there might be something more to this.
Yeah, don't just focus on the lone gunman theory. Check out this Heidel connection. And then it gets even wilder. This article drops another bombshell. We're talking about the Army's pre-assassination file, the one on Oswald.
Wait, there was a file on Oswald before the assassination.
Apparently so. But guess what? Gone. Destroyed.
Destroyed. Seriously, you've got to be kidding me. Talk about convenient timing.
Right. And it gets worse. The Defense Department, they straight up lied to the Warren Commission, said they'd handed over all the relevant files. So now we're talking potential cover-up, right? Was this just routine file destruction, or were they hiding something big?
It makes you wonder what they didn't want anyone to see. Was there a connection between Oswald and Army intelligence that they were so desperate to bury? I mean, what's the truth here?
Well, the article throws out some pretty interesting leads for someone to go and investigate. For example, maybe some other agencies, they kept copies of this destroyed file, or the Dallas FBI files, those might hold some clues. And then there's always the possibility of, like, actually talking to the people who were with Army intelligence back then.
Talking about missing files. Remember those bus passenger manifests? The ones that could prove or disprove whether Oswald actually went to Mexico City just weeks before Dallas. Poof, gone.
Vanished into thin air. Borrowed, they said, by these mysterious Mexican investigators. Nobody seems to know who they were, though. And to add fuel to the fire, the bus station manager claimed that the manifest wouldn't have even shown Oswald's name directly.
Instead, it would have shown a ticket number.
Exactly. A continuance, he called it. And get this, that number could maybe be traced back to New Orleans?
Ah, okay, so maybe these investigators were after that ticket number, trying to figure out where Oswald had been before Mexico City.
That's definitely a possibility. The author seems to think that these missing manifests might have had some info that someone somewhere really wanted to keep quiet. Maybe linking Oswald to other people, or activities in Mexico that they didn't want coming to light.
Okay, so now we're talking secret meetings, disappearing documents, starting to sound like a spy thriller. You really got to wonder if there was, I don't know, like an attempt to control the narrative right from the start.
Exactly. Control the information, control the story. And there's this cable, sent on the evening of the assassination by Army intelligence to the U.S. Strike Command in Florida. And it mentions Don Stringfellow.
Wait, Stringfellow, as in the Dallas Police Department intelligence chief.
The one and only. And according to the cable, he told the Army that Oswald was a card-carrying communist, someone who'd gone to Cuba, defected.
Right, like they were painting Oswald as this big communist threat, maybe even trying to justify some kind of military action.
But here's the weird part. The cable doesn't mention anything about Oswald confessing to shooting Kennedy and Officer Tippit.
Yeah, it's like they were cherry-picking what information to share, maybe trying to steer the investigation in a certain direction.
Exactly. Like, here's the information that fits our narrative, ignore the rest.
Right, and then you've got to remember the HSCA, they concluded that the Secret Service, the FBI and the CIA, they were all in the clear, not involved in the assassination. But what if they never saw these Army intelligence documents? including that one that got destroyed. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but you're missing a bunch of pieces. You might think you have the whole picture, but...
But you don't. And those missing pieces could change everything.
Okay, so we've got missing files, possible cover-ups, maybe even attempts to manipulate the investigation. What's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, there's this detail in the article that always gets me. The HSCA, they were really interested in figuring out who those guys dressed as Secret Service agents on the grassy knoll were.
Yeah, those mysterious figures that everyone's always talking about.
Right, but the Department of Defense, they did a check, and guess what? Failed to identify those men.
Hold on, so you're telling me there were potentially imposters on the grassy knoll and nobody knows who they are?
That's what it looks like. The author suggests that maybe if someone dug a little deeper, checked files from other agencies, they might find something, maybe uncover their identities.
It just seems like there are all these loose threads, these potential leads that were never fully explored.
Definitely. This whole thing just screams for more research, more transparency. We need to know what really happened in Dallas. And then there's another point. This one's about Professor Robert Blakey, the HSCA's chief counsel. He straight up ordered the military personnel who helped with the autopsy to keep their mouths shut, to not talk about it.
Whoa, seriously, why would he do that?
Tough to say without knowing his reasoning. But it does make you wonder about what went down during that autopsy. Maybe there's some info they didn't want the public to know about. Sensitive stuff.
So we've got missing people, a destroyed file, potentially hush-hush autopsy information, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. What else is out there waiting to be discovered?
Well, this article also dives into a really strange detail about Oswald's alleged trip to Mexico City. Remember those people who claimed to have seen him on the bus?
Oh yeah, the ones that supposedly backed up the official story.
Exactly, but their stories, well, they're riddled with inconsistencies. For example, you've got these two women, Paula Hudford and Patricia Winston. They claim they met Oswald on the bus down to Mexico City. Even gave a detailed account of their conversation, saying Oswald called himself Tex.
Okay, seems straightforward enough. What's the problem?
Their names aren't on the passenger manifest for that bus, meaning it's pretty unlikely they were even on the same bus as Oswald.
So either they were mistaken or someone made up their testimonies.
Exactly. And get this, it gets even weirder. You've got this John Bowes, or Albert Osborne as he was also known, elderly guy, supposedly shared a seat with Oswald.
Right, I read about him. Didn't he give a really detailed description of Oswald?
He did, but it didn't match Oswald at all. He described this young guy with thin blonde hair and a dark complexion. Doesn't sound like Oswald to me.
So was Bose just wrong? Or was there someone else on that bus, someone pretending to be Oswald?
That's the question this article is asking. This whole Oswald double theory is, well, it's definitely intriguing, especially with all the other strange things surrounding this Mexico City trip.
It seems like every piece of evidence we turn over just creates more questions. This is getting complicated.
It is, but that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're peeling back layers of history, finding hidden details, questioning the official narrative, and trust me, we're only scratching the surface.
Okay, before we get too caught up in this Mexico City stuff, I think we should switch gears. There's another article in this issue of The Third Decade we need to talk about. This one looks at how accurate William Manchester's book, The Death of a President, really is. Specifically, his portrayal of Jackie Kennedy.
Interesting. That book was pretty controversial when it came out. I'm curious what they found.
Well, the article argues that even though Manchester was super critical of Lyndon Johnson and Oswald in his book, he made some big mistakes when it came to Jackie Kennedy.
Really? But didn't he have, unprecedented access to her while he was researching? I thought she gave him exclusive interviews and shared all sorts of personal details about her experience in Dallas.
She did. But even with all that, Manchester still got some key facts wrong. For example, he says that Jackie's appearance at a Supreme Court reception on November 20th, 1963, was her first public outing since her son, Patrick, died in August. But that's not true at all.
Oh, right. She hosted that big event for kids at the White House just a week before. It's strange that Manchester would miss that, especially since he even mentions it in his book.
And there are other examples, too. He describes Jackie's behavior during the assassination in a way that doesn't match up with the Zapruder film or other photos.
How so?
He says Jackie was sprawled on the sloping back of the car right after the first shot, like she was trying to avoid being hit or falling out of the car. But the Zapruder film and other pictures, they show Jackie reaching for something on the trunk of the car.
A lot of people think she was grabbing a piece of her husband's skull that was blown off.
Exactly. And Manchester also messes up details about what she was wearing and her interactions with people after the assassination.
It's surprising he would make so many mistakes, especially since he was close with Jackie Kennedy.
The article argues that these errors, even though they might seem small, they make you question how accurate and reliable Manchester's book really is.
It's a good point. If he couldn't get the basic facts about Jackie right, what else did he get wrong?
Definitely something to think about when you're reading the death of a president. I think we've covered a lot of ground for now. Let's pick back up after a short break and keep diving into these articles and what they all mean. Okay, so let's jump back into that second article from the third decade, The Trip That Never Was, Oswald in Mexico. It really digs into whether Oswald actually went to Mexico City a few weeks before the assassination.
Yeah, it really picks apart the supposed evidence and asks some tough questions about what really happened there, especially when it comes to Oswald supposedly trying to get visas from the Cuban and Soviet embassies.
You know, one thing that's always bugged me is that whole photo mess with the CIA. Remember that? They released a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly taken at the Soviet embassy, and it turned out to be some random guy.
Yeah, that was a major oops moment for them. And then you've got the missing voice recordings. The FBI claimed they had tapes of Oswald's calls from Mexico City, but surprise, surprise, they could never find them.
It's almost like someone was trying to create this paper trail to put Oswald in Mexico City, but didn't do a very good job of it. Or maybe there's something else going on, something they were trying to hide.
We'll take a look at the hotel registry. The article talks about a signature for Lee Harvey Oswald at the Hotel del Comercio, but the handwriting is super suspicious. If you look closely, all the entries on that page are in the same handwriting, except for Lee Harvey Oswald.
Wait, seriously? So someone wrote in everyone else's names, and then someone else came along and added Oswald's.
That's what it looks like. And the hotel manager's story, when the FBI asked about it, is pretty weak. He said guests would write their names, and then a clerk would write everyone's names again at the end of the day.
That's just ridiculous. Why would they do that?
Exactly. It makes no sense. And to make it even weirder, the registry shows that room 18, the one Oswald supposedly stayed in, was occupied for several days after he supposedly left.
So is the manager lying? Or did someone mess with the registry on purpose to make it look like Oswald was there?
I'm thinking someone was definitely playing games with that registry. And then you've got those fellow passengers who claim to have seen Oswald on the bus to and from Mexico City. But their stories are full of holes.
Yeah, like Paula Hudford and Patricia Winston. They said they chatted with Oswald on the bus to Mexico City, even remembering that he called himself Tex. But their names aren't on the passenger manifest for that bus.
Right, so were they really even on the same bus as Oswald? Seems doubtful. And then there's John Bowes, or Albert Osborne, that older guy who said he sat next to Oswald. He described the guy as having thin blonde hair and a dark complexion.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like Oswald at all.
Not even close. Their article even suggests that Bowes might have actually run into someone impersonating Oswald.
Whoa, hold on. An Oswald double. Who would this guy be, and who is he working for?
Those are the big questions, right? The article doesn't give us the answers, but it does point to some areas for further investigation.
Okay, so let's talk about Oswald's supposed return trip from Mexico City. What's the deal with that?
It gets even murkier. The original story was that he came back to the U.S. on a Transportes Frontera bus, but the passenger manifest is gone, just like the one from the trip down to Mexico.
Poof. Another disappearing manifest. And what happened this time?
Well, they're saying a guy named Arturo Bosch took it. The article thinks he might be one of those mysterious Mexican investigators who took the other manifest too.
Interesting. But then, didn't another passenger list pop up later on? One from a Transport del Norte bus.
It did.
And was Oswald's name on it?
Nope. But there was an entry for an H.O. Lee who bought a ticket in Chihuahua.
So the FBI decided this H.O. Lee guy was actually Oswald, traveling under an alias so no one would recognize him.
You got it. And they claim that Oswald purposely reversed his name on his travel documents, but there's nothing to back that up. The Greyhound agency in Chihuahua confirmed that the name on the ticket was H.O. Lee, not Lee Harvey Oswald.
And didn't the article say that Oswald's wife, Marina, gave the FBI a ticket stub for that same ticket number later on?
Yep. It's kind of convenient that she just happened to have that stub, don't you think? Makes you wonder if maybe some of the evidence she gave was, well, not entirely reliable.
Okay, so if Oswald didn't come back on that Transportes Frontera bus, and he wasn't H.O. Lee, how did he get back into the U.S.?
Well, there's a Mexican immigration record that suggests he might have left by car.
By car. That totally contradicts what the FBI was saying.
Exactly. And when they asked the Mexican immigration officials about it, they said they didn't keep good records of how people left the country. Not very helpful.
Talk about a shady investigation.
Right. The article basically says we need to take everything about Oswald's supposed trip to Mexico City with a huge grain of salt.
And the author makes another interesting point. He says, maybe we shouldn't be so focused on whether Oswald went to Mexico City, but rather on why anti-Castro groups were so quick to push that story.
Like maybe they were trying to make Castro look bad and justify the U.S. getting involved in Cuba?
It really makes you think about the motives of the people who were spreading that story.
It's a tangled web for sure. Instead of a nice, neat puzzle, we've got all these pieces that don't quite fit together.
And that missing Army intelligence file, that's a big piece to be missing. Who knows what else is out there?
It just shows how important it is to keep digging into this. We can't just accept the official story without question. We need to keep asking questions and searching for answers.
Like, who were those Mexican investigators who took off with the bus manifests? And what about those guys pretending to be Secret Service agents on the grassy knoll?
Those are just a couple of the loose ends that need a closer look. And as we've seen, even little details that seem unimportant, like the mistakes in Manchester's book, can make you question the whole picture.
Yeah, it's like one little inconsistency can lead to a whole avalanche of questions and doubts.
Exactly. That's why we have to be careful and look at all the information about the JFK assassination with a critical eye. We need to consider all the different perspectives, weigh the evidence carefully, and be wary of easy answers.
Because sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.
And in this case, the truth might be hiding in plain sight, buried under all the official secrets and misinformation.
After this deep dive, I'm convinced that the JFK assassination is far from a closed case.
Me too. These articles give us some very good reasons to keep searching for answers.
So, for anyone listening, if you're intrigued by what we've talked about today, I encourage you to check out these articles from the third decade and do your own research.
There's a ton of information out there, and the more we learn, the closer we get to understanding what really happened that day in Dallas.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to find that missing piece of the puzzle.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never stop looking for the truth.
It really does feel like, I don't know, like someone's holding back, giving us half-truths, maybe. Or just making evidence disappear. Makes you wonder what they're so afraid of, right?
Yeah. Makes you question those official investigations, how thorough they really were, and how transparent.
Think about that Army intelligence file on Oswald, the one that's missing. They say it was destroyed before the assassination, but why would they even have a file on him if he was just some nobody, some ex-Marine? And the timing, come on, it's just too perfect.
Way too convenient. And then Mexico City. Ugh, what a mess. The missing bus passenger manifests, that weird hotel registry, witnesses who can't seem to get their story straight. Trying to piece it all together is, well, it's almost impossible.
Maybe someone was trying to make it look like Oswald was in Mexico City, but they messed up the details. Or maybe they were hiding something totally different. Who knows?
Maybe the goal was to connect Oswald to Cuba or the Soviet Union, make it look like there was this big communist plot.
And who were those Mexican investigators who just happened to walk off with the bus manifests? Were they covering something up, or were they working some other angle?
That right there is a mystery that needs some serious investigating. And these articles, they give us plenty of places to start.
Even that book by William Manchester, the one about Jackie Kennedy, it makes you wonder how much of what we've been told is actually true. If he couldn't even get basic facts about her right, what else did they get wrong?
It shows you how important it is to think critically, to really look closely at any information about the JFK assassination. We can't just take what they tell us at face value. We need to question things, question the people in charge, and keep digging for the truth.
This whole deep dive, it's left me feeling unsettled. There are so many unanswered questions, so many things that just don't add up.
I agree. The JFK assassination, it still fascinates and confuses us. And these articles, they remind us that the search for the truth, it's not over.
So what do we tell our listeners? What do they do with all this?
Don't be afraid to question what you think you know. The official story might sound good, but there's definitely more to it. Dig deeper, follow those leads, and see where they take you. You might uncover something amazing.
I like that. And remember, every single detail matters. Even the small things that don't seem important. They could be the key to the whole mystery. Stay curious, keep your mind sharp, and never stop searching for the truth.
Well said. Until next time.
That's all for today's deep dive. We'll see you next time, ready to explore another one of history's biggest mysteries.